So this video is brought to us by Count Dooku. Very angry man, as you can see. Oh wait, what's he got going? Oh yeah, nope, nothing. So what we're going to look at now is a very basic understanding of statistics and kind of the study of statistics and really how we kind of set up statistical studies. So the first thing we need to note, and we talked a little bit about this back in section 1.3, is that in our current world we have this thing called data. And data is, there's just tons of it out there. I believe we talked about the two types. There's quantitative, the name of this class, which is data that is defined by numbers that we can do calculations with. And then there is categorical or qualitative, which is data that is not numerical, or at least it's numerical data that we can't do calculations with, like your social security number or your name or something of that nature. And I think this is maybe one of the most important parts of a math course in this day and age, because our world lives off of big data. So one of the things that we do is we try to answer questions, or we ask questions that could be answered with data. For example, our author begins the question with, hey, don't we think that grades are being inflated over time? I'm sure you heard the story of how your great-grandfather had to hike uphill barefoot in the snow carrying his 7 brothers and sisters to get to the one-room schoolroom where the wood, they had to chop it down to keep the fire going, and they worked hard to earn the grades they got. And life was always difficult back in the good old days, right? And they earned their grades and blah, blah, blah. And nowadays we just hand out grades to everyone. So, okay, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. How might we answer that question? How might we determine if there's grade inflation? And one way is to look at the grades themselves and see what kind of grades are being handed out. So here's a table of data. If you want to look at where this data came exactly from, you can look at gradeinflation.com. And these are the average grade point averages for students in several different years, 1983 to 2013. And you can see just from a basic look that back in 1983, the average GPA was at 2.83, and now it's at 3.15. So maybe this shows that grades are inflated. Of course, maybe it shows that we've gotten better at teaching students, or maybe it shows that students are smarter, or maybe we have better technology to help with education, or maybe we're just more easily handing out grades. All right, so what is that data set, and how could that data set help us answer the question? So we need to start with the question, like, so is grade inflation a real phenomenon? So then we go out and get this data and we interpret it. So in the table, we have the average, we'll call it GPA, and I'll put some students, because we don't exactly know, it wasn't clear in the description, for different years. And to be clear, I guess these years are 1983 to 2013. How do we think these numbers were calculated? Well, my guess is we took the GPA of students, added them together, and divided by how many students. This would be what's called the mean, which is one measurement of average. The second question here is a really important question. What students' GPAs were considered? Meaning, are these, let's say, students headed into the medical field, so med students? Are these students that are just getting business degrees? I shouldn't say just, but are they business degree students? Are they STEM field students? Are they liberal arts students? What kinds of students are they? Because it makes a difference, potentially. And if our goal here is to answer what is the happening with grades in America, we really want this group of students, some students that we've got, to represent all students that go to college in America. And what we're talking about here is the distinction between a population and a sample. So a population is all the subjects under study. So if our question is, what is the average GPA of an American student? Then the population would be all American college students. Now, we could start getting really specific about this. What do we mean? Do we mean like American citizens, like citizens of the United States that are enrolled in a college? Are we talking about any student enrolled in an American college? Because there are students that get visas, come to America on student visas to enroll in our colleges from all over the world. What specifically are we interested in? It's not clear from our question what we've decided, and as the researcher we would want to state that. Who are we interested in particular? Our sample is the students included in the GPA calculation. So if we want to get an accurate description of the population, we need to make sure that this sample is representative, and we need to have carefully drawn it, and we need to make sure that all types of students are in that group. When I said med students, like pre-med, those students are having to get into what's called a second admit program, meaning they have to have a high GPA, they have to pass, get scores on exams. Let's see, I forget the name of them. Is it the MCAT to get into medical school? If you're going into law school, it's the LSAT. There's all these different tests to get into these different programs, and you have to be better than your peers, or you have to have higher test scores. So for them, it might matter, whereas if you're a business student, you might just need to graduate, and so your grades don't matter as much. So you might not shoot for 4.0s. That's kind of the stereotype, right? C's get degrees is the label. So when we talk about a representative sample, when we're thinking about that, we need to make sure the sample contains, or the sample lacks bias. We'll just say the sample looks like the population. So if all we had was pre-med students, or all we had was STEM field students, calculus students, or something of that nature, it's not going to accurately reflect the GPAs of American college students. Okay,